Welcome to Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer, the podcast that will increase your enjoyment of craft beer and your admiration for the people who create it. We have traveled to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we are in the fantastic Lakefront Brewery and Tap Room with Russ Klisch. He is one of the co-founders of Lakefront. We are going to discuss a trend in beer. Are people drinking less? We are also going to share the stories that make each beer unique and each brewer unique. And we are going to start by busting a beer myth. I am beer drinker and Hellraiser Brian Noonan. Behind the camera is Cody Goff, our executive producer. And with me, as always, she is the high priestess of hops, the matriarch of malts, the femme fatale of fermentation, and the siren of suds. She is, of course, the co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing. It's Catherine Vallow. Hello.
Hey, buddy. I usually start off with a hey, buddy, because I haven't seen you in a while.
Right.
But we just got done with a car ride.
A nice drive up to Milwaukee.
We're going to spend so much time together today.
It's good. Yeah, this could be
So
the end
much
of the
bonding.
end of the whole podcast after this.
How did they die? Just wreckage.
Before we get into the myth, let me formally introduce our guest. He is, and I think I'm accurate when I say this, you are the OG of Milwaukee craft beer. Russ Klisch is one of the co-founders and owner of Lakefront Brewery here in Milwaukee. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank
this
you.
Is very
Thanks for coming on up and making the drive.
No, this is an honor. Thank you so much.
It is. So we always start with a beer myth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
All right.
Yes.
And Catherine always has a myth because as a guy who's drank beer, and you have as well, your entire life, we've heard things about beer that may or may not be true. What is our myth today?
So our myth today is that all craft beer is specialty, which I think is something that's important to discuss as we look at the breadth and the depth of beer portfolios as they are in the craft world now, and then what specialty is. So to think that craft is like, oh, it's so specialty, it's not approachable, is ridiculous,
Yes,
right?
I would say so.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd. Thoughts? And then we can get into more of the things, right?
Yeah. Well, to me, like, when you're a craft brewer, you want to make all the beers, or want to make the beers that, it's for you. I always look at it as almost like a musician sometimes. It's like, a small band, can they play anything they want or along the way? And they say, yeah, they can. And it's basically up to them. But they all have their own little types and styles and uniqueness that they have. And the same thing with craft beer, where, when you come up there, you're going to be drinking, like I poured for Cody, it was, our dive beer. And so this is what we call Milwaukee Lager, but it's our version of the Milwaukee Lager. And it's different than what you have for, like, maybe the mass guys do.
Yeah.
But it's about the same percent alcohol, but it's kind of the same style. But we do it a little bit different, just like if
But
you're a
still
brand.
approachable for people.
Well,
Still
approachable.
something that is...
Yes.
When we're talking this whole concept of specialty, it is special because you've made it special. But does that mean it's only reserved for, one
Snobs?
kind of drinker or a beer snob or something like that? And the answer is no, not even a little bit. Right?
No, we do a lot more than we do beers for beer snobs. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, sure.
But we do beers for everybody. We're kind of like the Will Rogers of beer. We never, we've never met a beer we didn't love, and so we always want to make something, and every style has a purpose or a place.
Absolutely.
to go to.
But I think that's, right there, we busted it just then, right? So is it all specialty? Is it all exclusive? Is it all these things? And the answer is no, not even a little bit. Craft beer is for everybody, which is one of my favorite pint glasses I own. It says craft beer is for everyone. And it's true. It isn't just specialty. It can be your standard styles done in a kicked up way or in a way that puts a spin on a classic style. It can be something that is absolutely, higher end beer snobbery, whatever. And it can be just in the middle.
Well, let's go back, because you said you do make some beers for beer snobs. Because if somebody walks into Lakefront, into the tap room,
Yes.
you have pretty much, if you like beer at all, there's something on the menu for you here at Lakefront.
Yes.
When you decide to do a beer for the quote unquote beer snobs, where does that come from? What's the steps to go, all right, we're going to veer off a little bit and create this?
We have a brewer series that we do. We meet once a week, and we always talk about different styles coming up, or we always want to have like a barrel-aged beer. Okay. So right now, we're going to be coming out with a tropical lager aged in rum barrels. That's coming up here soon. That's about 10%, I think. And so that'll be canned up in about 2 weeks. And so that'll be the last one. I think the last one's oatmeal stout we had. We have various other beers. We have our Black Fridays that we do throughout the, the celebrations that we have. So we always have something for a beer snob here. It's not maybe always on tap, but it's usually a lot of times in cans or bottles behind the bar.
The problem with your Black Friday, and it's not a problem for you, it's a problem for guys like me. I'm always here too late to get some of the some of the ones that I want to get. So let me formally reintroduce our guest. Russ Klisch is the co-owner of Lakefront Brewery here in Milwaukee. Russ, again, thank you. I love the fact that this brewery kind of started out of sibling rivalry and a joke between you and your brother.
Yes, yeah. I graduated from college and back in '82, and at that time there's like 12% unemployment. I didn't have a place to go, and so I called up my brother and said, "Well, can I live with you?" And he said, "Sure, come on down." And he was living in the River West neighborhood at the time, and his birthday was coming up, and I figured, well, even though I didn't have any money at the time, you figured I'd buy him something. So I went out to Walden Books and found a book on how to brew beer. He was talking about brewing his own beer. So I gave it to him, thinking, well, it's a gift. At least I got him something. And he actually went out and bought himself a home brew kit after that, read the book, and made a beer, which looked like hell. It was. I remember the kitchen floor as sticky as possible. Every kitchen utensil's used.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, how is this going to taste? And he gives it to me, and it's not the worst beer I ever had. And I start looking at the book, and I graduated degree in chemistry, and there's all this chemistry in here, and it's like, well, I know what they're talking about. I can make beer, and so I made a batch of beer. Then he made beer, and we started entering local contests. Both of us started winning awards, and of course, one guy wanted to win more awards than the other. We kept on brewing, and then once you start winning a bunch of awards, it's part of your brain goes, well, maybe we should open a brewery. And then it kind of went from there to, well, can we find investors? And no, we can't. How we can open a brewery? And it's like, well, let's open it as small as possible to lose the least amount of money. And maybe we just keep our day jobs. And that's what we ended up doing.
Because you opened the first one right by your house, right? Like, it was like walking distance.
Yeah, it was a block away in River West, old bakery building, old Pete's Bakery.
Oh, wow.
And so they closed, and so we went back in a place that grain was meat and yeast again.
Very nice. So you start the small thing. It said, I read that you sold your first barrel on December 2nd, 1987. How does that come about? Because you're a small brewery. Are you just doing drafts and barrels at that point?
Yeah, just draft. But, River West neighborhood's an old Polish neighborhood. So this means there's a bar in every corner. And, of course, you live there, and you'd come home on weekends sometimes, and we just wouldn't even leave the neighborhood. We knew all the bar owners. Yeah. And so, of course, we started telling the bar owners, we're opening up a brewery. And back in those days, nobody wanted to go to River West. And they were excited about this as something new happening to the neighborhood. So we had 4 taverns. One tavern we knew real well, which was the Gordon Park Pub back at the time, which is now Nessa Dorma. But, yeah, the guy said, yeah, we'll put it on. And that was where our first barrel was tapped.
And how did the first barrel go over?
It went over well. I remember the bar was packed. Everybody had a great night. And
That's incredible.
Yeah, and then local news was there, and
nice.
And they showed earlier, and then later on we stayed around till like 10:30 when they had it on. Like everybody starts cheering.
So once that happens, and you're in a bar now, and it's going well, when do you and your brother decide? Okay, it's time. We got to scale up a little bit.
Yeah, after about the first half year or something like that, all of a sudden you realized it was, it was a labor of love, but then it was a lot of labor. We were only brewing in basically 55-gallon stainless steel drums.
Okay.
Is essentially what it was. So it was 3 half barrels. Every time you made a batch of beer, it was 3 half barrels. And so it was a lot of work, and it's like, well, maybe we can get a 7-barrel system in. And then you start scouring all the used dairy tank places around the state, and you just kind of get creative and thinking. And I remember going down to like Cicero, Illinois, and trying to go to use tank yard there and hauling something back, which we end up. I think that tank is still in the yard over here too. We don't have it marked well, but it was in the cosmetic industry, and so we brought that in, and we brought a lot of the dairy tanks in, and we kept on increasing our size, and we hired somebody and to do the work, and it was just adding a piece of equipment here and there, and we're still doing it today.
And was that the location prior to this one, or was there something in between?
No, there was only 2 locations, one at 818 East Chambers Street and this one on Commerce Street, 1872.
And what did this used to be? I remember it was some sort of factory, correct?
Yeah, it used to be an old power plant. It was built around 1906, and they built an apartment complex or building one on the right or to the east or west of us here. And the bankers didn't want to have an industrial building next to them because the city gave them a bunch of money for that. And they told them they had to tear this building down. And so, or else they had to, find a non-industrial use for it. So they considered us non-industrial for some reason. And,
Okay.
and so the city basically, well, you want it, otherwise we're going to tear it down.
Yeah.
And so we said, sure, we'll take this building. It was 5 or 7 times the size of our other building. You can actually take a fork truck and drive it around in here compared to the old.
Can you
truck.
really?
Jeez.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can do it up here and you do it everywhere. But
That's what I like
this
to
was
hear.
built. It was an old industrial, it was an old power plant, and then they used after that underground division for the electric company was here, and then it was city forestry building. All their trucks used to be parked in here.
One of the things that I don't think a lot of people get is the amount of strength that a building needs to have to be a brewery. Like there's the weight that's on these floors is more than any brain can generally comprehend. You're like, no, you've got to reinforce everything. So the fact that the bones were so good to start is incredible.
Yeah, that plus high ceilings. That was
That's
nice.
the thing. Yep.
Oh yeah, because looking out into the brew house, it's a long way down.
It's long, yeah.
And it's a long way up.
And you try standing those tanks up with a crane. You need that extra space on top.
Oh my God. No, I remember rigging tanks in and no thank you.
So you went from a 3 half-barrel system when you first started. What's your capacity in this brew house now?
It's a 50-barrel brew house we currently have. But we have some tanks here that are 200 barrels, so we brew 4 times into them.
Yeah.
And we also have a 50-barrel and a 100-barrel and 150-barrel tank. And if 115, we can do real small batches in.
Oh, that's nice. That's real nice.
Yeah.
For friends that don't know, beer math is different than normal math. Like when beer people talk barrels, a lot of humans are like, I don't know what that means. So a barrel is 31 gallons.
Yes.
So when you math that out, it is like if you're thinking in life, a gallon of milk.
Right.
Right? So 31 gallons in one barrel, then math up what, a 50-barrel brew house is producing per turn. Right. And that's brewing session, right? So like that's an astronomical amount of beer.
Yeah. No, we brew a lot here. I mean, average week's probably around 800, 900 barrels.
Good Christ.
Of barrels of that we do. So.
And is there a big time commitment between, like, if you're brewing East Side Dark or Hazy Rabbit, and then you want to brew some? How does that work? Because you have how many beers are on tap now in the tap room? Approximately.
We have 18.
Okay, so how does that work to make sure everything is still there? What's the timing like, I guess, is my convoluted question.
The thing is that everybody says, well, why don't you come out with this beer? Let's have this other specialty beer. Let's do this. And then it's hard always to fit an extra one in because you already have fitted in all the ones you possibly can get in the rotation. And then if you fit another one in, then all of a sudden you may not brew another one in time. And so that's where the hard production control comes in, where how much you have and how many it's basically being a yeast farmer is the most important thing, because you have the lager yeast and you always have to brew lager, and you always have the ale yeast. You got to keep that one going.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we also got gluten-free, but we'll usually use new pitches of dry yeast on that one every time. And so it's but yeah, just to try to have all the different brands and all of them in stock and all of them knowing how they're selling. That's the important.
It's such a timing game.
Yeah, it is a timing.
And I think one of the other things that's just another thing that folks sometimes don't always get is that beer does not spring up from the ground magically. It's a fermented beverage, which means it's going to take time. So yeah, when you talk about a timing game, it's, well, I've got to time this all because this guy could run out And if it does, I got to replace with this one. And then and just, it's all music.
No, it
Cheers.
is, yeah.
Well, or beers.
I'm glad you mentioned the gluten-free because Lakefront has been, you guys have innovated on a lot of different levels. But one story that I found fascinating was you petitioned the government basically to say, hey, we want to be certified for having a gluten-free beer. What does that mean? Because you would think, we all know beer is basically the same few ingredients. One of them would contain gluten. How did you get around that? How did you become the guy who's got this gluten-free beer that's basically condoned by the government?
Yeah, maybe I can start to tell the story about how it starts. But it all kind of started one day when I got a phone call. I remember I was supposed to run in the bottling line, and phone rang, but you want good customer service to answer every phone. So I answer it, and it's a doctor from Houston on there. And he starts telling me, he goes, I just had your organic beer. We were the first organic brewery in the country, too. And he says, well, if you can do an organic beer, you can do a gluten-free beer. I never heard of gluten. I didn't know what gluten was. And he told me, he started explaining it to me because I'm in a chemist term, which made sense. It's this large molecule. It's about the same size as a bacteria molecule. Your gut, gets tricked by it. And, your villi's fall over and blah, blah, blah. You have, diarrhea. And I'm the guy like on the airplane that gets a special meal. And there's one out of every 500 people have this condition. And all of a sudden, I woke up when I heard that. So 1 out of 500 people can't drink beer. And I can make a beer and get 1 out of 500 drink. That's a lot of beer. Yeah. And so I started thinking about it. And like a week goes by and I'm working up the courage to go talk to my head brewer saying, maybe we can try to make a beer without barley. Or wheat, and it's like nobody does this, And so I went up, I talked to him, and he goes, my dad's a celiac. I never had a beer with him. I'd love to do it. And
that's
and so I said, okay. All of a sudden, it's like game on, and then you start looking into it. And back then, actually, the federal government had something where to make something called beer, you had to have 25% malted barley. In there. And that was a regulation that the government had to have a tax like beer. And that's the difference between that or a cider or anything on that sort that that have, or wine. So there was a trade show, TTB, or back then it was ATF, in Philadelphia. I had a booth there. So I would go up to him. I start telling him, I said, I'd really like to try to make this gluten-free beer. And we could try to make them with sorghum. But it has this regulation that you have to have 25%. And it was interesting because everybody in the booth had a friend that was a celiac. Wow. And there was like 10 of them there. And it was like, yeah, we got to create this. And so all of a sudden, the lead guy was there, and he gave me his card, and he said, write me what's called a statement of process, send it in to me, and I'll see what I can do. And about 45 days later, it came back approved.
Whoa. Incredible.
And so it's like, well, now I got to do this.
Yeah,
you're on the spot now.
On the spot. So it's all of a sudden, we found Brews Malting Company had sorghum syrup up there. And for sale. So we brought that down, started making it, and that was in 2005. Wow. So we were the first one to basically get approval from the federal government or on this. And it's kind of interesting because I haven't traced it, but that was the first time that the government gave approval for someone to do a beer without barley. And since that time, seltzers, everyone comes around. So sure. I was like, the first seltzer ever made was that New Grist beer. And that led to all those other beers being taxed without barley being put into them. That goes back. Because right now, any like White Claw is all made with cane sugar.
Sure, of course.
How was how long a process with the recipe? Do you remember, was there a lot of trial and error? Or having that chemistry background and the brewing background, were you able to, in your mind, go, this is what I can use to replace the barley, and it should work perfectly the first time?
Yeah, well, I think I might have had 1 or 2 batches. It wasn't too much. Sorghum has a twang to it. If I've ever had it, I've ever put it on pan.
Yeah, it can be weird.
Yeah, it can be kind of weird. But, I remember one guy telling me that, he was just so overcome with happiness that he's found this. He goes, I can finally go to a Packer party and not have to drink a Chardonnay. And and so there was a lot of people that were just thrilled with this. Yeah. The fact they can look at
Chardonnay.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, we've got a lot more innovations we have to talk about, but now is the time where we like to have a drink and talk about the beers. So, Cody, do you want us to break? Do you want us to just keep going?
take a little
Cody
break.
likes to do his old-timey piano music.
I like to do
Or
the
like
old-timey
his jazz
piano
riffs.
music. I like the jazz riffs.
All right.
Ready?
All right. So the beautiful thing about Lakefront Brewing, one of the beautiful things for Lakefront Brewery, is that there are beers for all tastes. So we have 4 people here. We have 4 different kind of beers. Russ, why don't we start? We got to know what the man himself is drinking.
I'm drinking our Lakefront IPA. So it is. That's our standard, one of the largest selling IPAs in the state. Big following, nice big, what I call heritage hops are in there, Centennial, Cascade, and been around it, but it's a classic flavor. Always sold well.
Was this one of your originals?
It's original first IPA we did.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the first IPAs in the state, actually, that we did back early 2000s.
Was there when that came out? Was the beer culture hadn't really evolved yet? Was there a big demand right at first, or was it something that you had to educate people in Milwaukee and say, "Hey, try this. This is really good"?
There's always education in beer. I think that was the one thing that you have that's taken us a long time to get back, and we have to get back to it right now to help beer sell. But yes, you have to tell people it's supposed to be that bitter. It has this. It's supposed to have these flavors in there. It's supposed to taste a little piney. I remember pouring one for a bar owner in northern Wisconsin, and it goes like, it's like I got a bunch of pine needles in my mouth drinking this beer.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what you're supposed to. Without
Success.
the prickliness, that's what you need. Yes.
I've done my job.
Yeah.
Without that stabby thing happening.
And one of the coolest logos, you have great packaging, great logos, but Catherine is drinking the
Hazy Rabbit.
Hazy Rabbit.
Hazy
What is a
Rabbit.
Hazy Rabbit?
Yeah, no, that one has more tropical hops in there.
It's lovely.
And it's, of course, hazy. A little bit of wheat also is in that beer, so that makes it a little bit creamier. And so I
It's New England. It's great. I think what's awesome, too, since we've got 2 IPAs on the table, is just the difference
Yes.
in color, the difference in clarity. Like, it's just gorgeous. I could look at a beer rainbow all day long and never, ever, 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 ever get tired of seeing just the
different colors,
the spectrum of color that you can get, even in just pale ales and IPAs, because you can get all of them. Sorry.
And I always like to go to the darker end of the rainbow. And I told you when I came in, East Side Dark is one of my favorites. What is East Side Dark?
East Side Dark is a Schwarz beer, or Dunkel. Basically, it's a lager, dark German lager beer. Germans don't like anything out of balance, and so so when you taste it, you understand that it's very drinkable. There's a roasted flavor in there. You taste the malt, you taste a little hop, but none of it is dominating.
No, everything it's like just sitting on a nice calm lake.
Yes.
It's perfect. It comes in, and I'm like, oh, I could drink this all day.
You could.
And it's 5% or something like that?
Yeah, it's a little 5.2 or 3 or something like that. But I always tell people, if you can drink 2 and you want a third, it's a good beer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's this beer.
It is delicious. And you mentioned the one you poured for Cody, Dive Beer, which is a new one. Cody, how are you enjoying the Dive Beer?
This is great. I'm glad we're not staying here too long today, or I'd be in trouble.
So what is Dive Beer again?
Dive beer, we call it Milwaukee Lager. It's just basically a heritage beer for, or similar to, pays homage to the heritage breweries that were here. That style of beer, it's 4.2% alcohol. It's also, we could probably call it a value beer. We currently put 15 cans in a package and sell it at a 12-pack price. Nice. Since there's a little less ingredients in there. And so far, it's been a big hit.
That's brilliant.
It's one because you guys also at Lakefront, you're known for your fish fry and your cheese curds. That sounds to me like the perfect beer when I'm having lunch or dinner.
Oh,
you know, it goes with pretty much everything.
Goes with everything. Great to sit out in the patio with on a hot day, type of thing. Washes down the food very well.
I had to interrupt, and I got to put something on record so my brain doesn't forget it. We talked about Germans liking things in balance.
Yes.
Yeah? Cody, next T-shirt, we're going to do a scales, and we're going to have hops, and we're going to have barley, and it's going to be in balance, and there might be something about Germans liking things in balance.
Perfect. German flag colors, perhaps?
I don't know about that. I'm not going to get too committed on this idea right now. I'm just making sure that
Just
I don't
throwing
forget
it out there? All right.
Right.
Noted.
But now it's on record for the whole world to be like, is this shirt coming out? Is there a balance?
We don't have merchandise meetings. They just happen during the interviews.
First of all, this is a great way to do it because,
You're thinking.
I know. Let's get back to some of these things that Lakefront did first. The indigenous beers, the fact that you guys, the barley and the malt and that kind of stuff, but you also found a way to get indigenous hops from Wisconsin. So tell us about how you championed indigenous beer here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, back around 2006, 2007, we started working with local farmers and to grow hops here. They talk about terroir with grapes, and I always felt that there's terroir with both malt and barley.
And what is that for those who don't know, me included?
It means the ground and the atmosphere or the temperatures, the amount of sun it gets, affects the flavor or type of product that you have coming out.
What are those roots sucking up from? Yeah. Right, like what are they
sucking up, and then
what is it getting in? What is it sucking up?
And it's also, the temperature, the growing season, all that goes together. But, grape growing in Wisconsin is not going to be the same as in California or New York State or France or anything on that sort. It always has like a different, what they call terroir to it. And it's the same genus and species in all of them, but it's all grown a little bit differently because of the ground and atmosphere and soil.
Okay.
And so it's the same with, barley and hops. They all grow a little bit different here.
Well, latitudinally, we're here about latitude-wise. No, not Seattle. Where are we? Like Oregon?
Oregon, yeah. You're supposed to be around 50 degrees north of the equator is like great hop growing area.
Right. So I think here, we're in a good latitude for hops.
It is
we're going.
Yeah, because you have to have like a killing frost, and you have to have enough sun during the day, and you have to have a growing season of 80 days or something that you have. And that's what you have here as compared to if you go farther north or it'd be too long if you're going south, and then you'd have other issues.
Did you have, were farmers eager to jump on board and start growing hops?
There were several, and now we have the Midwest Hop and Barley Co-op we have founded, so both to grow barley and for hops, mostly hop farmers we have right now. But back then we did have some barley farmers that wanted to grow with us, and we found them, and we got them malted locally at Brews Malting Company.
Shouts to Brewers. We love them so much.
Yes.
They're just the nicest company, too.
No, it was a great local company, great family-owned company.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of things. They listen to you.
And that's good.
Also, Brews Malt, sponsor us. We really enjoy you.
And I didn't know that before I said that. But
no, that's much like merch meetings. We don't talk much when we talk here.
Okay. But anyway, so you have this local flavor. So we got the farmers to make the hops, and we got the breeze to malt the beer, and all of a sudden we had all local ingredients, and all of a sudden said, well, can we get some local yeast? It's like, how are you going to do that? And there was a guy who was actually running a homebrew store in town here, Jeremy King. I think it was Northern Homebrew Supply. And I told him about that. Can we get any local yeast? And because he had a PhD in microbiology from Purdue.
Okay.
And so it's like, I thought this guy to talk to.
This guy could come up with some yeast.
And so all of a sudden, a couple weeks go by, I don't think of anything. All of a sudden he shows up at my doorstep and says, well, do you have any local malt? I said, sure. And so I just give it to him. He says, okay, I'll go back and I'll see what I can do because there's probably yeast on the malt and it hasn't left the state. And so then he crushed it up, put it in a test tube just with water.
Okay.
Things started growing. And he was able to he said that he found 4 different strands of yeast in there. He brought out there, and he said that, he tried fermenting each one, and one actually worked well.
Wow.
Or good enough. And that was the yeast we used for the Wisconsinite. And so that's when we came up with the all-indigenous beer. So we were the first one to do water, malt, yeast, and hops, all from within a small radius, or it's the same state.
That is, that's really something.
Yeah, so we got a bunch of nice awards for Wisconsinite, and
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, just looking around the walls as we walk through the taproom, Lakefront has won many awards, and obviously that's important.
Yes.
But I think I also see the ones where you're voted by local people, your
Yes.
customers. Your customers are voting you the best. So is there one that means a little more to you, or are all awards are good, but is there one where you go,
there's
I'm
a couple.
glad?
Well, I mean, the European beer stars are important. It's made that
What
one.
are those?
That's kind of like the Great American Beer Festival of Europe,
Okay.
or the World Beer Cup of Europe. So it's a big award over there. It's put on by the private breweries of Germany. And so they have this thing. So all the private breweries come in. They have their own contest and the whole bit. And one year we won Oktoberfest, and we got second place in Pilsner with the Klisch Pilsner. And so that was, to me, kind of important when you sit there
that's
and
a good
say,
one.
when you go there and win those, and these are judged by German brewmasters. It's not like a couple home brewers out there.
No, these are the guys.
These guys, the guys all went to Weinstein,
guys,
and the guys.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then we know for local here, I always feel good about the fact that we get voted like the best place to take your friend from out of town.
Okay.
And so I like that meant a lot to me, that we could build this and have something that the city really appreciates. So
the longevity of Lakefront is legendary. I mentioned at the beginning, you are the OG of craft beer. Obviously, you brew great beer. That keeps people coming back. Do you ever think, well, what else? I mean, obviously, it's the beer, but what else is there? Because there's a lot of places that brew great beer that don't have the longevity that you guys do.
Well, I always tell people that you're kind of like the rock band from the 60s, where if you don't come up with a new song or a new thing every 4 months, 6 months, something like that, you're just old history. And
That's great.
and so you have to constantly reinvent yourself. Have to constantly think what else is new in the beverage industry, what styles are going to be trending, not now, but in the future where nobody has, which is kind of hard because everybody says, well, nobody's buying this. Why should I make this one? That's what I get from people. It's like,
future casting in beer is one. Yeah, it's one of those very, very challenging things to do because you've got to go, all right, well, the example that I can think of off the top of my head is we saturated the industry with high ABV beers for a long time. And then everyone had to be like, all right, at some point, the bell, like, we got to come down from this. So now with like more lower ABV, more sessionable beers being available, and everything isn't like 9 or above, but it took time for anyone to kind of realize, oh my God, like, we can't stay at 12% forever. I mean, Cody would like to stay at 12% forever. However, but yeah, I mean, future casting is such
and
a
so
huge
that's what
part
we're
of
doing
it.
right now, and we're looking at it. And we came about 3 years ago, we started doing NA beers out here, and we got the best craft selling NA beers in the state right now.
Wow.
For that's made in Wisconsin craft beers. There's some other ones that sell better than us, but made out of state. But still, we're the state's NA brewery. So that's been big for us. And we continue with Gluten-Free, where we just came out with a new Gluten-Free IPA that's selling very well. And then we got the dive beer, so that's come out. And then we're trying to look at what's next right now. But
I was
those are
going to
three.
ask, what's going to be next
Right.
on the playlist?
To me, it's I feel it's flavorful beers that are not the high alcohol beers, but very drinkable beers. Beers with flavor. I'm thinking Weiss beer might be good, because that's going to be a beer that I think that it comes back.
What is a Weiss beer?
A Weiss beer is made with special yeast. It's usually a German style. It's made with a lot of wheat and barley, normally about 4 to 5% alcohol, very drinkable. But the yeast gives it a clove flavor, kind of phenolic flavor that you have, almost similar like the clove you put in a ham. And so there's a lot of flavor there, but then it's not high alcohol. So you can drink. You always see Weiss beer glasses there. Usually about 20 ounces worth of beer that you can drink. And, on a hot summer day, it tastes delicious. But, I always tell people there's a lot of fashion in beer, or alcohol, generally. And
It's a great way to put it.
and just as if, what you're wearing today isn't going to be around. Everybody thinks it's so hot.
Right.
That, in 20 years from now or 15 years ago, everybody's going to sit there and go, that's silly. Why would you ever do anything like that? And then all of a sudden it comes back again.
It's so cyclical.
It is. And if a lot of people don't remind it, but remember this, but back in the early 90s, like every craft brewery in the state of Wisconsin had Weiss beer. And they're all drinking, plus with every other imported beer and everything. But that was a big thing. Everybody had to have a Weiss back there. And all of a sudden it went to zero. Bock beer was kind of the same way for a while.
Yes.
It went real big, and then it went down. Nobody had Bocks. And all of a sudden Bocks are really back right now.
Which is good news for me.
Yeah.
You know what? They
ahead.
do it all for you.
Well, listen, I'm a beer consumer.
That's what I'm saying. No, but you specifically.
Oh, well, sure. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
Russ, we ask every brewer the same 3 questions to wrap up our interview. Question number 1 is the hill you'll die on. And I have a feeling it might be different for you. That means the beer that, even though it might get wildly popular, you're just like, no, Lakefront isn't going to get involved in that. Are there any like that for you?
She waits with bated breath.
Well, no, I mean, there's things, even though we do have one, I've never going to package a seltzer probably.
Okay.
On that sort. It's not because anything against seltzer. It's because if you understand the industry, it's made by mass-produced companies with a lot of advertising. They're very generic, and you really can't tell one from the other. And the only thing that really tells it difference is the advertising that you have. And it's just such a hard game to play to try to do one right. Well, to do it right and have it going out there. But you've seen people, a lot of big breweries that came out with seltzers like Pabst or somebody, and then all of a sudden you don't see them anymore. Or even Corona, I think they had one that they have. So that was that, and I almost think the same thing about which I should never say never, but like cocktails in a can or something like that sort, which is I don't know if that's for us, but
No, it's fine. I have strong feelings about this. And they're not good feelings.
Yeah, and so to me, more flavor, it's more of a, more crafty is to try to mix those 4 different ingredients.
Now, you've had 36 years of experience. A beer that you brewed that maybe it was popular when you brewed it, but for some reason you will just never brew it again.
I remember having our blackberry wheat. That was really popular. And it was like sold like crazy. Then all of a sudden it was like nobody wanted it. And it's like, I don't know, maybe I would bring it back. But right now it's that was one that I probably wouldn't come back with.
Okay.
Or maybe our Easy Teasy was the other one.
What's that? What one was that?
That was like a 4.2% combination between tea and beer.
Oh,
maybe
okay.
I was maybe
Cool.
look at that one. Well, actually, it was way before its time. Right now, tea beers or tea drinks are big.
Yeah.
And they're huge. But we did that. Oh God, that was like 12 years ago.
You're definitely future casting on that one.
And so we were way ahead of our craft. But I'm not sure if that would ever come back and do that one.
Interesting.
And when you're off the clock, could be one of you Lakefront's beers. What's your go-to relaxing beer? Just sitting out back at the end of the day.
Well, it'd be the East Side Dark.
East Side Dark.
That would be happy. I always said that's a shift beer for all the brewers here. The one that you have, you can drink 2 and you want a third.
Definitely.
And so to me, that's the most flavorful. And to me, it's kind of historic. That's basically based off a homebrew recipe I had when I was
I'm just going to smell it.
was young.
Go ahead.
And I won a nice medal at the Wisconsin State Fair with that recipe. And
Yeah, it's really easy drinking. And for people, again, and we talk about this before, people are going to look at that and go, man, that's really dark. It's got to be heavy and high alcohol, blah, blah. It is unbelievably
I can't handle
approachable.
it.
It's a wonderful beer. I can see why the brewers want to drink it too. Okay, now is the time when we look at a trend. And Russ, you sent us a trend, and
Beer behavior. The segment's called beer behavior.
It's all right.
now is the time when we look at beer behavior, and that's
It's
right.
a new segment.
It is a new
segment.
You gotta brand it.
It's exciting.
Oh,
and
all
it's
right.
not that customers aren't still behaving terribly. They are. However,
Now it's time for our new segment, Beer Behavior. Take 7. Russ, you theorized that the behavior you've noticed is people aren't drinking as much. Are they not, in your experience, are they not drinking as much beer? Are they not over drinking? What brought you to this behavior?
Yeah, it's been a big topic in the industry right now, and because alcohol production or consumption has dropped.
Right.
It's dropped with beer, it's dropped with wine, and this is the first year it's dropped with spirits. And so all three have dropped in this past year. And so you look at what's going on. And from what I can tell, the same percentage of people, it's about 65% of people in this country drink alcohol. And it's been that way since like 1940. Right. So it's kind of like on our DNA, how many people drink and how many people don't drink. And it's been almost like within 1 or 2 percentage points the entire time. Right now it might be 1 or 2 lower. But what we're finding, though, I think, is that the amount drank at each session is less. And that's what's driving the volumes down. It's not the fact that less people are drinking.
Do you think that goes to what you guys were talking about earlier, that now there's more of a trend toward lower alcohol, more sessionable beers than before? Because, I can have 2 or 3 of the East Side Darks at about 5, a little over 5%, yes. Where if I'm drinking an 8 or 9, 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, well, people still want to go out, and
sure.
So you have the NA beers out there. They're a great pacing beer, where okay. you can have one beer and then you have an NA and then you have another beer and then you can spend most of the night, or maybe have another NA after that, and then then you're fine to drive home.
Sure.
And so that's why what we're finding or looking at is that people still want to be out, they still want to socialize, they still want to be it, but one, they shouldn't be driving if they have too many, and but yeah, so mostly, especially one other statistic I should say throw out there I've always found interesting is half of all alcohol is consumed between the ages of 21 to 29 on the average person in the United States, believe it or not. And so if you think about the days when you're 21, 29, how much you drank back then, that's actually you drink half the alcohol. For the average person. A lot of people, obviously there's other things that go on. But a lot of times that's when you drink most of your alcohol. And the people right now from 21 to 29 are more cautious, more, or look at it. It's not that fun anymore to be looked at as drunk in the room.
Right.
It's true. Well, yeah. Patterns of consumption are changing. We've got data all over the place that shows us that. And yeah, the trend toward not drinking as much. But I think it's interesting that the amount of people the percentage of human people has not changed. The amount of consumption is the thing that is
something that's changing right
and
now.
The way that those patterns are changing within the industry too.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing, I don't believe that we're seeing the younger people replace the folks that are not, like, at some point, I will not be consuming as much beer as I once did.
Yeah.
And there will not be a younger person that is going to necessarily take my place because they'll have found different or have created different consumption patterns.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we look at these real, these young ones now, younger millennials and Gen Z.
That's why I've committed to drinking as much beer as I can until I drop.
You know what? A grateful nation thanks you.
Well, listen.
Yeah, no.
Every brewer should tip their hat.
You're
Right.
welcome. A great, right.
You're welcome.
You heard it here first, craft beer.
I'm just here to serve.
Humble servant.
Humble servant of beer everywhere.
That's another T-shirt.
So
just
what's
humble servant.
Beer. There you go.
So what's the answer? How then do you say, okay, older people are drinking a little bit less because that's just the evolution of age. Younger people, how do we retarget them? How do we get them back?
Well, for me, I look at things like flavor. Mostly what beers have most flavor. If people are going to be drinking something, they want that and different styles. And that goes back to education, too. We're educating people. If you're a wine drinker, you want to know about the different grapes and how it's all fermented and what type of wood and all these different things that bring these different flavors out. And with beer, you want to talk about the hop and the malt and how it's the length of fermentation, the different yeast that's used. And once you do that and you understand the different tastes, it becomes a lot more fun to drink and enjoyable to drink a beer compared to, that was a problem, back in the 70s where everything tastes the same and everything was done the same. It was just like eating white bread all your the whole day.
And I think it's good that craft beer has avoided, for the most part, the word light, and that. But craft beer is creating beers with lower alcohol and some lower calories are equitable to if you bought one of those diet beers. So where do we change the marketing to get so people know that without it being equated to, one of those watery beers that, like you said, tastes like nothing?
Yeah, I still think there's, good flavor. There's still a place for, a lighter style beer.
Oh, yeah, lighter style, but without that negative connotation.
Yeah, light is well, to me, when I see light, it's calories. Right. And so you have to have calories. So even though this does have lower, it's about 120 calories. But, to me, compared to Miller Lite, which is, 99 96. Or 101 or something. Yeah. So anyway, it's fairly similar. But it's just, it's just your lifestyle and you're going through and what do you all want to have? But to me, I'd rather have a little more flavor.
Yeah.
Well, we'd rather support a human person that makes it as opposed to a gigantic corporation to start. And then I think secondly, going back to the educational piece, right? The more you know, figure out a star wipe. The more you know about the process, the more you know about what goes into it, the more you appreciate the craft behind the product that you're drinking. That's going to draw you back into the industry too. And we've said a number of times in the show that, like, when you drink and appreciate the alcohol and you appreciate the process of fermentation, you appreciate all the skill that goes into it, you're not then just out to get blitzed, which is the trend that we've seen. I'm in it to appreciate it. I'm not in it to, pass out on my couch and not remember shit the next day. Told you. There it was. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Mom.
Could I throw in a question?
You could throw in.
So the youth, I'm a millennial.
Okay, calm down. Trying to be the youngest one in the room.
I'm a very young, spry producer. Young people like experiences is like the big trend, right? Like you can go to JoJo's Milk Bar downtown Chicago and get like a $23 milkshake and they make it Instagrammable, right? Ooh. And even though it tastes like garbage, like they want that experience. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, in the beer industry, what I find very appealing is limited releases, small batches, barrel-aged programs, because it's kind of like, it feels like exclusive. It feels kind of like, they're only getting, they only have so many barrels, and then once the run is over, it's over. So have you found any particular success with like limited releases or smaller batch releases, maybe with younger people?
Yes, there's one thing we've done, which is called the My Turn series, where we allow every employee to brew their own batch of beer. We do it 4 times a year. We're on batch number like 51 right now. So we've been doing it for almost 12, 11 years. You got the AJ out there, Dunkelweiss, right now, and so that's what he wanted to brew. So everybody, what I found was that everybody comes up to you all the time and saying, we should brew this style of beer. And it's like, well, we give everybody their chance.
Everybody gets
a shot at what style of beer they want to have, and they can put it out there, what they like. And so you have this huge diversity. I used to find that people would have limited releases, and it was always made by the same brewer.
Okay.
And they all seem to have the same personality. They're all hoppy, or they're all barrel aged, or they're all something like this. But this, you can look at them on the walls over here. You can see all the names of all the ones that we've had.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's what those packs are up there.
Yeah, you see everybody
the
had
Tristan,
the
the
ones.
Anthony, the Rob, the
God.
Chopper.
Yeah. They're
All
all.
right, well, now that we know.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck.
Do you remember which one? I'm sure they were all good because they've all been packed. Do you remember which one stood out the most, or do you not want to?
Well, that's like picking a favorite kid now.
That's true.
Oh, you can't do that.
That's true.
But
Irish pub ale.
But yeah, no, they're always. You can look how much different diversity they have, and so anyway, that's one thing that we've done for limited release. We continue to do that, and I think it's the number that our employees have, knowing when their turn's coming up, is tattooed on their eyeballs, and they understand when they're going to have it. It's something I can never ever, I don't think, stop doing. But reverse. We have our Black Friday. Yeah, I should have brought one here. Anybody want to try one? But that we have that every year. Those are limited releases that we come on out with. For everybody lines up for this one.
Yeah, it's
we have our barrel age series. We have 4 seasonals throughout the year. Nice. We do those. That's always good.
Can I open?
Yeah, you can open
just the
up.
box, not anything else.
No, you can open up the beer if you want to drink the rest of your beer.
This feels that feels too special. I am not. No.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Nope, I am worried. I worry.
Gonna rip that box.
Listen, I'm a Gen Z Catholic. I worry literally all the time. There's nothing I don't worry about.
But yes, no, special releases are always nice, and there's a certain
I'm a
place
Gen
to them.
X. That's my problem.
I just drank one of your Black Friday beers that I had for a couple. I think it was like a 19.
Oh,
Cody and I drank it. It was delicious.
this is just sexy. Hang on, zoom, please. Get it. Like little turns. Make this. Do you want? I can make this Instagram.
Let me ask the evolution of the Black Friday then, because it used to be the big bottles.
Yes. Yeah.
When did you go to the can and the beautiful boxes?
We might go back to bottles this year. We're still trying to debate whether we can do it. We had too much going on. We just put our canning line in, which is a whole other story. But we didn't have. We didn't have any bottle. We didn't have a bottling line. To do it. It's just too much to work. So we put all 19.2s, put a nice box on there.
Yeah.
And as you said, made us look sexy.
Yeah, that's a sexy beer.
And
Cody, get the hose out of the truck.
And so anyway, we canned everything this year.
So it's very cool. It's very cool. Well, Russ Klisch has been our guest. We could talk to Russ for hours about
Quite
all the
literally.
things that have been happening at Lakefront Brewery, which is located at 1872 North Commerce Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you are from Milwaukee, of course, you know where Lakefront Brewery is. If you're coming to Milwaukee, come to 1872 North Commerce Street in Milwaukee. You can check out everything at lakefrontbrewery.com. And on the social medias, it is, of course, Lakefront Brewery. Russ, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
This was incredible.
It was great.
Thank you. I'm gonna geek out over some like yeast and barley and stuff. Also, everybody needs to see a hop farm in their life. They are the most incredible. Hops are gorgeous when it's just go to a hop farm.
All right, Catherine, people may be looking at you and I and our branded merch. They may be wondering what's the deal with Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer. You have some details?
Brian, I do have details. If you want to support the show, please buy our merchandise at craftybrewerspod.com. We have shirts. We have sweatshirts. Some have a hood. Some do not. We have iPhone cases. We have hats. We've got tanks. We have all of the things. Every purchase that you make on our website helps support us, our production costs, and all of the things that allow us to bring Crafty Brewers to you. Today's featured merchandise,
yes.
We talked about this quite a bit today. I'm really excited. We talked about a beer rainbow. We have a sweet new shirt on the website. It's called Taste the Grainbow. You're welcome. You're welcome,
All
pun
right.
lovers. Taste the Grainbow. It's cool. It's got just a bunch of
cool.
different can styles and beer styles and whatever. It's awesome. And then parlaying that right into our next, right?
Socials. What about socials?
Everyone loves to be social. Social medias. Please follow along on Instagram. We are at crafty_brewers_pod. I just found out we were somewhere else recently and it blew my mind.
We're everywhere.
We're on Audible.
And if you are a brewer who would like to join us, or if you know a brewery that you'd say, hey, we'd like to hear you talk to our favorite brewery and learn their story, go to craftybrewerspod@gmail.com, drop us a line, and we will talk to, we love talking to brewers.
We do.
So today's episode of Crafty Brewers was produced and edited by the one and only Cody Goff. For Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer, he's Russ Klisch, the president of Lakefront Brewery. She's Catherine Vallow.
He's Brian Newman.
And any parting words?
Just for Cody, press every button.